That's it. Thank you. Recording.
Hello there, guys. It's me, Brian Cockrell of the Taxman Show. And I told you I was getting the amazing Joe Egan's here tonight. Welcome, Joe, to the show.
Thank you, Brian. Great to see you, pal.
Joe, we'd just like to go back to where you're from, where you're born.
I'm from Dublin, Ireland, Ringsend in Dublin.
Dublin, right. What was it like growing up there when you were a kid?
We had a great childhood. I'm one of seven. I'm the eldest of seven, Brian. So we had a lot of fun. My dad was away. He was working in the UK and America. So we had a lot of years, of time without my dad. But he was a good provider. He sent the money home like a lot of Irish dads.
Right.
They go abroad. Ireland's greatest export has always been his people.
That's right.
So he went and he worked in the UK and America, and he sent the money home to my mother so she could do the best job possible with 7 kids, 4 girls and 3 boys.
Amazing. Absolutely brilliant. When did you get into the boxing? Who got you into the boxing?
Well, when my dad used to come home, we used to go and visit him in the UK as well, and I experienced a lot of bullying, Brian.
Right.
When I came to the UK to visit my dad in Manchester, I got bullied because I had the Irish accent. And I got my 2 front teeth knocked out on the day I made my Holy Communion. All my years boxing, Brian, I only ever had 1 tooth knocked out. I got 2 teeth knocked out by the bullies because I had the Irish accent. So I picked up the English accent. And when I went home to Dublin, I got bullied in Dublin because I had the English accent.
You know what, Joe? That exactly happened to me. That we came down from Scotland. My family are from Ireland originally, from McGivrans. McGivrn is Irish and MH is Scottish. So when I was in Scotland, I had the Scottish accent. When I come down to England, I had to change my accent to be English to blend in with everyone. So I got bullied. And then when I went back, what are you talking like English for?
You know where I'm coming from, Brian. You know where I'm coming from. So when the bullies finished beating on me, rather than hitting my brothers and sisters, I used to jump back in and say, please don't hit them, hit me more, so they wouldn't hit them. So from a young age, I could absorb punishment. But when I told my dad about getting bullied, he encouraged us to learn how to box. Right. First and foremost, to defend ourselves against the bullies. And I love boxing because I think boxing gives you first and foremost self-respect and then respect for other people.
Yes.
But when I went into the boxing originally, it was to learn how to fight, to learn how to defend myself, to have a good go against the bullies. But I done okay at it, I excelled in the boxing. I tried other sports when I was a kid. I was big for my age. I tried the soccer and I tried the rugby and I tried the basketball, but I didn't excel in any of them. I was rubbish, to tell you the truth.
In other words, you were born to fight.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was the bullies that brought me into the fight world, getting beaten and battered by bullies. You had to learn how to fight, Brian, And when I did the boxing, me and the next boy to me, Emmett, we used to go, there's only a year and 2 months between me and him. We used to go to the boxing club as company for each other. And we both won Irish titles on the same day, which was a great achievement. I won 7 Irish titles. I won 4 seniors, 2 under-19s and a junior. I never believed that I could achieve winning an Irish title. The chap that was the heavyweight champion of the boxing club that I boxed out of the North was a man called Paddy Finn. And as a boy, I wanted to emulate him. I wanted to be Irish heavyweight champion. I never thought I could win 7.
That's unbelievable.
Paddy Finn was my sort of idol growing up. Muhammad Ali at a later stage.
I knew you were going to mention him somewhere, Muhammad Ali.
Yeah. But Paddy Finn, like I said,
what was the best achievement you done, Joe? Was it the Olympics?
No, I never got to go to the Olympics, Brian. I boxed in the Acropolis Games, which is a pre-Olympic tournament. I boxed for Ireland. I think I boxed for Ireland 12 or 13 times.
Yes.
And it was an honour to represent our country, and hear the national anthem be played against some of the best fighters in the world, and it was the Acropolis Games that I got a bronze medal in. I got a bronze medal, and that was a major achievement. I never got to go to the Olympics. In '84, they said I was too young on the Irish team to compete at the highest level. They said I was too young. And in '88, because I'd been training with the professional boxers in America, Mike Tyson in particular, the Irish Amateur Boxing Association frowned upon that because they didn't like amateurs, because of the amateur status. They didn't like amateurs training with professionals. So they sort of overlooked me for the 88 Olympics. And I was boxing well in 1988. I'd beaten Bruce Seldon. He went on to win the world heavyweight title. I'd had a good row with Lennox Lewis. Me and him had done 3 hard rounds. He battered me. He battered me, Brian. But, you know, he did. He battered me. I'm not ashamed to say it. But
any excellent boxer.
Oh, one of the greatest of all times, Lennox Lewis. He got the bronze in 84. He got the gold in 88. But he was a phenomenal, talented amateur boxer. And then when he went pro, he achieved so much success. I think he won the world heavyweight title 3 times.
Right.
But, listen, I shared the ring with him, and I got to share the ring with Mike Tyson. I got battered by Mike Tyson as well. But I do tell people, Brian, if you're going to get battered, you might as well get battered by the best. I got battered by the best. But my amateur career was successful for me. I went professional. I didn't do much as a pro. I only had 4 pro fights, Brian. I won 3 and I lost 1. But I lost the 1 on cuts. I got stopped badly cut. I got 64 stitches after the fight and I was stopped on cuts. But I didn't really want to go professional, Brian, because the amateur boxing actually suited me. 3 rounds was more than enough for me.
Right.
You know, if you're getting hit by powerful punches, 3 rounds is long enough. 6 rounds, 8 rounds, 10 rounds, 12 rounds. It's a long time to be getting hit by some of the power punches.
What was it like when? How did you get to meet Mike Tyson? What was that scenario?
Well, when I won my Irish titles, I got to box for Ireland on a number of occasions. I went out to America to box when I was 17, and I boxed a big Marine sergeant, a man called William Dawson. He was 28 years of age. He was a mature man, a Marine sergeant, powerful man. And I hadn't got the mature man strength. I was big and I was capable, but I just hadn't got the man strength that he had. And I had a lot of courage. I think every fighter that climbs into the ring, man or woman, has to have courage. You're born with courage, Brian. You can give a person skills, you can teach them and improve their skills, but you cannot give a person courage. You know, you play football, you play basketball, you play golf, you play tennis. You don't play boxing. And to me, it's the hardest sport in the world. I'm not biased because I'm an ex-fighter. It is the hardest sport in the world. But when I got to go to America the first time, 17.
Isn't it?
Sorry, Brian?
It's one of the only sports in the world you get punched in the face.
Oh, yeah. And they hurt, Brian. People that tell you the punches don't hurt are telling lies. They all hurt. Some punches hurt more than others, but they all hurt. Yeah. Anyway, when I went out to America to box William Dawson, I was a boy on a man's errand. And I'd left school when I was 14. I was on the doors at 15. I was courageous and I was tough. But I hadn't got the strength of William Dawson. And he gave me a beating. But I stayed on my feet. Took the beating. And Floyd Patterson was in attendance at the time. He was married to an Irish lady from Offaly, and he took a great interest in the Irish team. And he offered Paul Fitzgerald, the Irish featherweight from Arklow, was a brilliant featherweight, the opportunity to stay on in America. Paul's still out in America. He lives in a place called Upper Darby in Philadelphia. And then he said to me, would I like to stay in America? Now, I don't know what I did, Brian, to impress Floyd Patterson. Maybe it was my chin, I had a good chin. Maybe it was my courage, I had a lot of courage. But whatever I did to impress Floyd Patterson, I'm so happy I did it because he gave me a chance to stay in America. I would never have had the money to go back to America. I remember phoning my mum. I said, Mum, Floyd Patterson has given me a chance to stay on in America. She said, you'll never come home, son. My dad was in America at the time. I said, I will, Mum. I'll come home next year. Anyway, Floyd brought me to Gleason's gym and I sparred a couple of pro heavyweights in Gleason's gym. Matt Tucker was one of them. I can't remember the other heavyweight I sparred with, Brian. And I gave a good account of myself. Al Gavin and Bob Jackson, who bought the original gym of Cus D'Amato in New York when Cus was getting rid of his gym in Manhattan. They saw me sparring. They took an interest in me. And they said, there's a young heavyweight in the Catskills, same age as me, actually 6 months younger than me, called Mike Tyson, and he's looking for sparring partners. I was just so happy to hear that this young man was younger than me because I'd been so used to fighting men. Even the American I fought was 28. I was only 17. So I said, yeah, I'll have some of that. So they brought me to the Catskills. When I got to the Catskills, I met Cus, Camille, Marnie, Jay, Tom, you know, Mike's family, and it was wonderful reception, Brian. It was beautiful. You know, the Catskill Mountains up on the Hudson River. Rip Van Winkle slept up there, so the myth says, for 40 years. It was so peaceful and tranquil. Then I met Mike. He came out to meet me. He was smaller than me, Brian. He was 6 months younger than me, and he spoke with a bit of a lisp. Now, I was full of courage and full of bravado, and I thought, I'm going to batter him, you know, because I didn't know. Brian, listen, it's funny because I didn't know what Mike Tyson was doing at the time. I'd never heard of him. He was knocking men out left, right, and centre. But I thought, because I'm older than him, because I'm bigger than him, because he had a bit of a speech impediment, I felt superior. But was I wrong? But we became friends overnight. We spoke about Ireland, and we spoke about Barry McGuigan and his relationship with Mr. Eastwood at the time, who I went professional with at a later date. I went professional with Mr. Eastwood. But Barry McGuigan and Mr. Eastwood.
As a boxer, Joe, what was he like as a person, Mike?
Oh, listen to this, Brian. He was a fantastic, lovely, lovely young man, except when he was hitting you. When he was punching you, he wasn't so nice. He punched with venom. Every punch he threw wanted to hurt you. But that night when we met, we became great friends overnight. The relationship that Mike had with Cuss was very similar to the relationship that Barry McGuigan had with Mr. Eastwood. And I knew a lot about Barry because he was Irish world champion. And Mike was fascinated with Irish boxers, the history of Irish boxing. And I knew a little bit about the history of Irish boxing. So we spoke and got on great overnight. I was actually starting to feel sorry for Mike. I thought, I like you, and I'm going to have to bash you in sparring tomorrow. The next morning, I know, stupid Paddy. The next morning, Brian, we got up, we ran 7 o'clock, ran for about a mile. Then Mike took off like a gazelle. And I thought, that's right, you tire yourself out. I'm going to bash you later in sparring. Came back to the house, had a bite to eat, went to bed for a few hours, got up midday, got onto the minibus to travel down to the gym in Catskills, main town, to spar. And as we're getting onto the minibus, suddenly these big, powerful men all appeared. And I thought, oh, that's them men. They're going to box. And those boys are going to box. They were very, very somber, like men walking to the gallows, getting onto the minibus, sitting on the minibus. Brian, honest to God, it was comical afterwards. You know, these men were sitting there, but they knew what was coming. Stupid Paddy didn't know what was coming, you know. I'm sitting with Mike. I'm so relaxed. I'm comfortable. We got to the gym, stripped off, got into our training gear, shadow boxed, warming up, bandaged up. Cuss said, okay, glove up. So I'm looking around. Next of all, I see Mike in the ring, and he's got his top off. Brian, the physique on him at 17, his biceps, his chest, his neck, his arm, his back, everything was just phenomenal. I thought, there's no way a 17-year-old boy should look like that. Then Cuss pointed to one of these big, powerful men to get into spar, and Mike knocked him spark out with the first punch. I tell people I ruined a good pair of underpants at that moment in time. I shit myself, Brian. I thought, there's no way this boy should have this power. Anyway, he knocked out 2 more sparring partners. I was number 4. I got in. I got battered for 3 minutes, Brian, battered from pillar to post. But I stayed on my feet. I got out. I was in a lot of pain, very sore. A couple, 3 more sparring partners got in. Anyway, I got back in again, done another 3 minutes. I did 2 rounds with him that day and got battered for 6 minutes. But I stayed on my feet, Brian. And the madness in me, all fighters have to have a bit of madness in them. You know, like I said, you don't play boxing. To have a bit of madness in me. The madness in me, I believed one day I'll get the better of you. I never did. I stayed on sparring with him for nearly 2 years. And I'm very proud to say, Brian, he never put me down in them 2 years. We sparred this particular day. There was 4 white sparring partners. Normally there'd be some black guys. This particular day, there was 4 white sparring partners. He knocked 3 of them out. I was number 4. I got battered, but I never got put down. At the end of the spar, Mike Tyson said, Joe Egan is the toughest white man on the planet. Far from it, Brian. I was the toughest white man in the gym that day. What a compliment from a man like Mike Tyson. But what sparring with Mike gave me, it gave me the belief that in my heart, I could take any punch off any man. Because if I could take a punch of Mike Tyson and stay on my feet, psychologically, I believed that nobody could put me down. I did get put down in my boxing career. But when I got into fight Lennox Lewis, I believed that I could take Mike Tyson's punishment. I can take Lennox Lewis's punishment. And I did. I got battered by Lennox for 3 rounds. It was a New York Golden Gloves team against the Canadian All-Stars team. And I got to share the ring with 2 of the greatest heavyweights of my era. 2 of the greatest heavyweights of all time as well, Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. And be able to say that I stayed on my feet with both of them. People say I milk it a little bit. Brian, I milk it a lot. I don't milk it a little bit.
Yeah, no one else can say they've done that.
Brian, yeah. I've earned the right to milk it, because like I said, I never achieved greatness in boxing. Every fighter that climbs into the ring dreams about becoming a champion of the world. I wasn't good enough to become a champion of the world, but I got battered.
Right.
I stayed on my feet by 2 of the greatest heavyweights of all time, definitely the greatest heavyweights of my era. And like I said,
back to your amateur days, yes, and Marty Turner told me this story. Marty Turner.
I know Marty well.
He was your coach at the time when he went to
Marty, if you're listening to this, Marty, thank you for your years of friendship, pal. There's a few of my friends listen to this show, Brian. Listen to your show. Rob Holloway in Wolverhampton.
You're great, lad.
Listens to your show. Yeah. And my other friend Tony, I was actually speaking to Tony today. Yeah, I know Tony from the BKB. Yeah. And we've got a lot of mutual friends.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
We've got a lot of mutual friends. But you've got such a lot of great respect amongst proper people. No, you have, Brian. You've got great respect amongst proper people. You and your wife, Emma, you're lovely people. Because I've spoken to so many people that sing your praises. Phil the Power Taylor the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for putting us back in touch.
No, that was a pleasure.
Thank you for putting us back in touch.
Thank you very much for back in with
what a gentleman he is for a superstar. But Marty took me away on a Northeast Divisions team because I boxed out of Newcastle for a while. There's the old saying, have gloves, will travel. And that's the way I was, Brian. I went all over the world boxing. But I settled in Newcastle for about a year. And I stayed. There was a man in Newcastle, he's dead now, God rest him, a man called Big Paddy Hallett. And a very, very well-respected man. He used to train the Blake Lawn Cowgate Boxing Club. And his 2 sons, Michael Hallett and Tony Hallett, they were like the 2 older brothers that I never had. Mr. Hallett looked after me, and his 2 sons looked after me. And you know something? When I lived in Newcastle, it was the safest I'd ever been in my life. I actually spoke to Jackie Hallett now today because Michael's not well, and I was just phoning his sister to see how he's doing. And I love the Hallets. But I lived in Blakelaw with the Hallett family. I boxed Michael in the Irish Championships. I sparred with Tony, and Mr. Hallett gave me a lot of great training. And I boxed in the Northeast divisions, and I boxed a man called Manny Burgo.
I know Manny from
Manny, good fighter, Manny.
Black lads
fighter. Manny beat me. Manny beat me on points, but he done well in the ABAs and everything. Was a phenomenal boxer. But Marty, he gave me the opportunity when I was boxing in the Northeast to go on a Northeast divisions team over to Denmark. Sorry?
Just when you went abroad?
Yes, we went to Denmark.
Yeah.
We went to Denmark. We went to
he said to me, ask you about the ice cream.
Oh, listen to this. I've got some great stories for him. Marty, I'll have to tell you that one. We went to Esbjerg in Copenhagen, and there was a young boxer on the team called Cornelius Carr. He went on to win the British title, and he boxed Steve Collins for the world title. He went 12 rounds with Steve Collins. I was at that fight in the Point Depot. I think it was 1990. I met Nigel Benn at the fight, and there was a few other champions at the fight. But Cornelius Carr was on the Northeast Divisions team, and we went on this boat. Now, I'd been on the boat many times from Holyhead to Dublin and Dublin to Holyhead, and it was like a trucker's boat, It was a cattle ship nearly type of thing when I was younger. Suddenly, I was on this boat going to Denmark, and it was like a floating hotel. There was a disco and everything on the boat, Brian, right?
Right.
Disco, restaurants, cinema. It was fabulous, this boat. We had an overnight cabin, all the boxers. And I thought, this is brilliant. So we went to the disco on the boat. And Marty, I tell you, it was a great trip. There was one of the boxers, there was a band out at the time called Fine Young Cannibals. And the lead singer of Fine Young Cannibals, I think his name was Roland Nastaza. I think that was his name. He was a mixed race chap, and he could sing. But there was one of the boxers, was the double of him. And everybody, and there was this song, Johnny, we're sorry. Won't you come on home? We're worried. I'm not a good singer, Brian. I'm not a good singer. But that was the song. So when the DJ saw this young boxer coming out, he thought he was the singer from the Fine Young Cannibals. And he put the song on. And everybody was around. It was brilliant. Oh, we had an amazing time. Anyway, we got to Denmark. And we boxed in Esbjerg and Copenhagen. I fought Brian Nielsen. He went on to fight Tyson a couple of times. And the man called Mogens Pal, from the Danish boxing officials. He was one of the big-time professional promoters over there as well. He looked after us so well because my auntie, listen to this, Brian, my auntie, Cynthia, she's married to my mum's brother, Sean. He's dead now, God rest Sean. But her brother, Paddy Burns, was the international matchmaker. They used to make the matches for Mogens Pal. So when I met Mogens, he had a friendship with me through my auntie's brother. So he really looked after it. I'm not saying that he wouldn't have anyway. You know, there's a lot of great friendship. You know, even though you're boxing against each other, different countries, there's still great camaraderie, Brian, you know. Anyway, we got so well looked after. But the trip was fantastic. But there was a lot of things happened on that trip. And like the old saying says, what happened in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happened in Denmark stays in Denmark.
I'm going to have to jump on it. Watching up again. One where he said,
it was so much.
He's all had a bit of a drink. You got in your bed. Get to bed now. And you got on the top bunk. And you fell through the bunk on the lad underneath, 19.5 stone. And the lad underneath was still asleep when you got off him.
Brian, you know how many beds I've broken in my lifetime? I've broken loads. I'm a heavyweight.
Now saw Joe Egan's there on top of him, and the lad's still asleep.
A lot of drink.
And in that is you give him the tip that Mike Tyson be the youngest heavyweight ever.
I told everybody, Brian. Yeah. I told everyone when I was in the Catskills at 17. I knew then Mike Tyson was special. I wrote to loads of people. I wrote to Steve Collins. And Steve was my friend, still my friend to this day. I boxed Steve twice. And been at both his weddings. A good man, Steve. Great world champion. Yeah, but I wrote to loads of different people. I said, I'm training with the future heavyweight champion of the world. At 17, I knew how special he was. And then I told everybody I used to meet, Mike Tyson's going to be the heavyweight champion of the world. And he was, youngest ever heavyweight champion of the world. You know, he beat Floyd Patterson's record, who, funny enough, Cuss used to manage. He beat Patterson's record. And I can't see Mike Tyson's record ever been beaten. Definitely not in my lifetime. 19 years of age, heavyweight champion of the world. He was something very, very special.
Well, everyone you told put the bet on, apart from Marty Taylor. And he's still kicking himself today.
He's still upset over it. But I used to tell everybody because you just know. It's like some of these boxing scouts and football scouts, they see young talent, you know, raw, natural talent, you know. And Mike Tyson, when Cuss seen him at 14 in the Young Offender Centre, Cuss said at the time, I'll make this boy the heavyweight champion of the world. He saw something in him at 14. I saw something in him at 17. And even though Mike achieved greatness, I still don't believe that we saw the best of Mike Tyson, because I believe when Cus D'Amato died, the best of Mike Tyson died as well. God rest Cus. Yeah. You know, Cus trained Jose Torres, Floyd Patterson, and Mike Tyson, 3 great world champions. He trained a lot of other fighters as well, but there is 3 main world champions. But you're saying about drinking, Brian. I'm an Irishman that doesn't drink alcohol.
Yeah.
People laugh. People laugh when I say, no, I don't drink. They say, what sort of an Irishman are you? I say, my dad says I'm a failure as an Irishman. It's expected of the paddies to drink. Yeah. I like a glass of milk. I love a glass of milk and a biscuit.
When I go to Scotland and I'll go up there and you have their whiskey, I went, no, I don't drink. And they feel insulted if you don't have a drink with them. And it must be the same in Ireland.
It's the same. My dad drinks enough for the 2 of us anyway. He drinks the whiskey and he drinks it straight, Brian. He never even used to put the ice cubes in. He's still alive now. He's 84. He's gone strong. But he never used to put the ice cubes in. He wouldn't put water in. He'd put the whiskey into the glass, the barman, and the barman would say, what do you want in on top of that whiskey? And he'd just say, put another whiskey in on top of that whiskey. And that was his attitude. And listen, he believed in the power of whiskey. You know, whiskey would cure anything. You know, if my dad was giving medical advice today, he'd say, listen, whiskey will cure COVID, you know, and God rest the people that have died through the COVID. You know, it's been a horrible pandemic, and please God, we're coming out of it now, and the light at the end of the tunnel. And hopefully,
what was the first? How did you get into the acting?
Do you know something, Brian? I had a great amateur career. My ability wasn't anything special. I was just tough, Brian. You know, so what limited ability I had to win 7 Irish titles and to win a bronze medal in the Acropolis Games I was an overachiever, really. You know, but when I went professional, I didn't do well as a pro. Like I said, I only had 4 pro fights, 3 of them, and then a loss on my 3rd fight. And I was in a bad car crash. And then my boxing career was sort of over for 12 years. And I got into a bit of trouble, Brian. And I ended up in prison. Yeah, I'll talk about it. I'm not ashamed to talk about it now. You know, at the time I was ashamed. But the first time I ever, I've spoken about it a few times over in interviews. First time I ever saw my daddy cry, Brian, was when I was a young boy. And his daddy had died. And I was sort of too young to understand what was going on. In every boy's eyes, his dad's the toughest man on the planet. And in my eyes, my daddy's the toughest man on the planet. And when we got overheard, like my mum talking to my dad when he came in from work, we come in from school and my mum sent me and my brother up the stairs to bed. It's only like 4:30, Brian. Batman was on at 5 o'clock. And we're looking down through the banisters. All my other brothers and sisters were in bed. And we're looking down through the banisters, and my dad came in from work. He was home at the time. A lot of the years he was away, you know, England and America working, but he was home for this particular time. And my mum greeted him in the hall, and she spoke to him. And then I saw him hold his head in his hands and start crying. And I got the fright of my life. I was cradling my brother, my next brother to me, Emmett, in my arms, looking down through the banisters. And I watched my dad cry, and I didn't know what was going on. My world was just caving in. And I found out then afterwards that his daddy had died. My granddad, God rest him. Anyway, all them years later, when I got into trouble and was in the courtroom, and I was found guilty and remanded, and I looked up to the gallery, Brian, and my mouth's going dry, excuse me. I looked up to the gallery, and I saw my dad hold his head in his hands and cry. And I felt ashamed. Normally, most of the time when I talk about it, I get emotional and I cry.
Yeah. Not to cry anyway.
Yeah, I cry all the time, Brian. I cry all the time. But the thing is, I'll tell you a funny story after this. I watched him cry, and I felt ashamed. I can't put it to words, the shame I felt that me getting into trouble and going to prison had the same effect on my dad as his daddy dying, you know. And I did, Brian. I felt sick to my stomach, not because I was going to prison, but because I'd upset my dad so much that he was going to, you know, he cried. Anyway, I swore then and I swear now I'll never get into trouble again. But when I got into the acting, it was to I redeemed myself. I'm not saying that I needed to redeem myself in my dad's eyes. He did not, you know, he'd never looked down on me. But in my own pride, I wanted to redeem myself in my dad's eyes. And when I met Cass Pennant at a Joe Frazier dinner night, because I'd sparred Joe's son Marvis for the Tyson fight, I knew who Cass was because he had published a book called Cass. My nephew's a West Ham fan, my nephew Tom, and I knew who Cass was. And half joking on the night, I said, you might write a book about me. Anyway, he said, let me hear what you've got to say. Anyway, I spoke. He took an interest in me. He said, come to his office the next day. I went to his office the next day. He said, if we can get Mike Tyson involved in the book, he said, we'll do a book. I phoned Mike. Mike was in Brazil at the time. And I put him onto Cass. And he said, Cass, anything for my brother Joe, whatever you need, he said, I'm there. Anyway, Mike did the forward for the book. Mike and his stepbrother, Tom Patty, and Ranald Graham, who's dead now, God rest him, he wrote the book. And Blake Publications published the book along with Cass. Yeah. And the book was launched in Canary Wharf. Mike Tyson flew over. He launched the book. Probably one of the best days of my life. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people in Canary Wharf, Brian. Several world champions in Canary Wharf, Alan Minter, Charlie Magri, Paul Silky Jones, oh my God,
Yeah,
Steve Collins, great world champions in attendance. I know everybody was there for Mike Tyson, but Mike Tyson was there for me. And he brought Canary Wharf to a standstill. And Tamer Hassan was in attendance because he'd worked on the Cass movie. You know, he was Cass's friend. So they were doing the Cass movie at the time. And they said, look, we'll give you a part in the Cass movie. So I said, oh, fantastic. So I got to play the landlord of the Britannia pub in the Cass movie between Cass and Tamer. They arranged this. And then Tamer said to me, Joe, you've got a good presence on screen. He said, do you fancy an acting career? And I said to him, I've acted my way through a boxing career. I'll give it a go, you know. So he introduced me to his agent. And his agent, yeah, listen, it's the truth, Brian. I wasn't any great shakes. But he introduced me to his agent, Camille. And she said, there's a part going in a Sherlock Holmes film. Play a character called McMurdo to fight Robert Downey Jr. Would I want to go for that part? So I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. So I went to the casting. The casting agent said, look into the camera lens, give an intimidating stare, say these lines. So I've done it. They said, wow, you've got an amazing, intimidating stare. I said, I've had to look into the eyes of Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis to try and intimidate them. To intimidate a couple of casting agents is no problem. Anyway, Brian, I got the part. They sent me along to the read-through in Claridge's. My nameplate, Joe Egan, next to Jude Law, Robert Downey Jr., Rachel McAdams.
You really beat you. I'm walking out.
Oh, Rachel McAdams, she got the Academy Award herself. But Eddie Marson, sitting opposite Guy Ritchie, Joe Silver, the CEO of Warner Brothers, all the hierarchy of Warner Brothers. And Guy said, Joe, I've been trying to get you in one of my films for a long time. I said, you're joking. And Robert Downey Jr. leaned in. This is Iron Man. He said, Joe, you come with a fierce and reputation. I couldn't believe that these people even knew me, Brian. They knew me through Tyson. And I was so humbled. Anyway, travelled down in the minibus to do the practice fight. And Guy said, how are things, Joe? I said, things are okay, Guy. I'm making ends meet. He said, has your agent told you much you getting for the fight scene? I said, Guy, I never even asked. I'm just honoured to be in your film. When he told me, Brian, it was more than I got in any of my pro fights. I was deadly serious. I said, Guy, for that money, I said, Robert Downey Jr. can really hit me. You can kick me as well if you want to. He took a fit of laughing. He said, Joe, I don't want you being beaten up. I said, Guy, I've been beaten up for a lot less. I'd do a few weeks in hospital for that money. And I didn't have to get beat up, Brian. He gave me a part that wasn't in the script. I got called Big Joe. In an Academy Award-winning actor in a Warner Brothers movie directed by Guy Ritchie. And it's made my mum and my dad so proud. My mum never wanted me to box. No mother wants to see her son being beaten up. But she sees me in the films getting killed all the time, beaten up and killed. But she knows it's not real. But in my eyes now, I've redeemed myself in my mum and dad's eyes. You know, I've made them proud again. Not that they were never not proud, Brian, but in my heart, I believe that they weren't, you know. But we talk about crying earlier on. I'll tell you a story now about crying, man. And one of the toughest men on the planet, Mike Tyson, right? Without a shadow of a doubt, right? This particular day, Mike had been speaking to my mum on and off for 22 years on the phone, Brian. 22 years, they'd never met. And he said to me this day, he said, Joe, how's your mother doing? I said, she's not too well, Mike. She's had a lump removed from her throat. She's had 7 stitches in her neck. They're concerned it might be cancer. Blessing to God it wasn't, Brian. My uncle, funny enough, my uncle Brian, my mum's younger brother, he died of cancer at 47, never smoked in his life. My mum was a heavy smoker, Brian, still is now, and 81 now. She was 81 on Monday. Last week, the 12th, she was 81. And she's still with us, and my dad, 84, still with us, thank God. And Mike was speaking on the phone, 22 years on and off. And he just said, how's she doing? I said, she's not great, Mike. She's the lump removed from her neck. He said, let's go and visit your mum, Joe. So me, Scott Welch, Mike Tyson, the entourage, we've landed in Dublin. And the hysteria, Brian, unreal. Right. You know, to walk through Dublin Airport with Mike Tyson, an airport that I'd worked in for Delta Airlines, you know, for 2.5 years. I knew the airport. I knew a lot of the staff in the airport. Suddenly I'm walking through one of the greatest heavyweight champions of all time through the airport was such an honour. To walk through Dublin was such an honour. But to walk onto the housing estate where my family had lived and my family were evicted. You know, we got evicted from the house by the council in Dublin. It was bad times when I was a young boy. I'm now walking onto that same housing estate with Mike Tyson, because my mum was living in my auntie's house at the time because they couldn't keep her in the hospital because there was the MRSA bug, and she was old, and she went to stay with her sister. So now we're visiting my mum in my auntie's house on the same housing estate that we've been evicted from. And I'll tell you that story as well in a minute, Brian, about eviction. But we went to the house. It was beautiful. It's on the YouTube. People can watch it on the YouTube. Mike Tyson sitting in my auntie's house. Yeah, Mike Tyson sitting in my auntie's house with my mother. Anyway, they got talking about birthdays, Brian. It was very surreal. It was beautiful to see. They got talking about birthdays, and Mike's birthday is the 30th of June, and my mum's birthday is the 12th of July. And they're both of the Cancer bird sign. And Mike said to my mother, he said, Mrs. Egan, he said, I remember on my 18th birthday, which was 22 years previous, I was with Mike when he was 17, he said, you sent over a shoebox, he said, with some potato chips in the shoebox. That would have been Irish Tato crisps. He said, some money in an envelope. Would have been very little money, Brian.
Yeah.
And some sweatshirts. They probably would have been second-hand sweatshirts. And my mother said to Mike, this was 22 years previous. She said, Mike, you remember that? And he said, Mrs. Egan, he says, very few people have given me anything in my life. Yes, I remember it. Right? Scott Welch got choked up. He had to leave the room. I started crying. I broke down crying. Now, Mike made me cry loads of times. He made me cry, battered me in sparring, made me cry loads of times. He looked at me, excuse the language, Brian. Anybody listening, excuse the language. He goes, Joe, motherfucker, you're always crying. You know, because he made me cry so many times. And he embraced my mum. And this is a man that can break bones with punches. And he was embracing a fragile woman. And to me, that brought it all home, because this man could have been a billionaire athlete. Now, can you remember what you got 22 years ago for a present, Brian? I can't remember what I got 22 years ago for a present. So for Mike Tyson, who could have been a billionaire athlete, to remember a couple of packets of crisps, a couple of pounds in an envelope, and a couple of sweatshirts, it shows you the humble beginnings that he had in life. And he did have a very, very hard introduction into this world. You know, even with all his success, I don't envy the introduction he had into this world, Brian. Running wild on the streets in Brownsville in New York. You know, a very, very rough part of New York. A young child trying to fend for himself. Lucky Cus got a hold of him and was able to turn him into one of the greatest champions of all time. The youngest ever heavyweight champion. You know, but when I spoke to you there about getting evicted from the council house, Brian, I'll tell you that story. You know, me and my younger brother, Emmett, he was a year or two. We used to get bags of logs. We used to buy a bag of logs for £1.50, and we used to chop the logs into sticks. We used to get the inner tube of a car and cut the inner tube of a car across to make it like a big elastic band. And we used to wrap the sticks in the elastic band, and we used to sell the sticks for 25 pence a bundle. And we used to make £7.50 out of the bag of logs. Anyway, we were doing this and selling the sticks, and then we went from selling the sticks to getting logs delivered, to chopping the logs and bagging the logs. But then the council at the time, they said that we were running a business from the back of a council house. We were 13 and 14-year-old boys, Brian, you know, kids really, you know, and they put the rent up to maximum rent, and they backdated the rent, and they said that we owed them £6,000 in arrears. And my dad was away working at the time, sending the money home and paying the rent and stuff. But it was out of the blue. And then when my dad came home and he fought them in court, and he was winning in court because it was wrong what they were doing. Right. Then they tried to make an example of him, and they evicted us years later. You know, I was actually away on the Denmark trip, Brian, when my family got evicted, you know, and I remember phoning home and I couldn't get an answer in the house. I thought, that's strange. Right. Surely with 6 younger brothers and sisters and my mum and dad, somebody must be in. But I couldn't get an answer in the house. So I rang my nana, my mum's mum, and she started crying on the phone. And she said, your mum's okay, your mum's okay. And I said, what do you mean my mum's okay? my mum had tried to kill herself. She stuck a knife in her stomach and she cut her wrist. Because during the eviction, I didn't even know this was going on, Brian. 4 days, friends of the family come to the council house. And 4 days, my dad and my family friends fought the bailiffs out. And after 4 days, when the bailiffs couldn't get in, they called in the Irish police force, the Garda Síochána. And my grandfather, my dad's daddy, was a police sergeant. And you can't beat the police. The police are there. They keep authority. Yeah. You know, people criticise the police, Brian. People say all nasty things about the police. But the police have to be there. You know, if we didn't have Brian, if we didn't have the police, we'd have anarchy. You know, people criticise religion. I believe in God and I pray. I don't force beliefs onto people. I pray. And I also respect the police. Even though being in trouble, I still respect them because they've got to be there. Because, see, when the shit hits the fan, and the shit hits the fan for people all the time, the first thing to say is, God help us, phone the police. You know, 2 things that people criticise. You know, so when the police, the Garda Síochána were called, my dad and the people in the house that were fighting the bailiffs, they gave up because they didn't have any arguments with the police. They didn't have one confrontation with the police, but the bailiffs didn't get in. The bailiffs were held out for 4 days. But when I came home from Denmark, I didn't know this was going on, Brian. My mum had tried to kill herself. My family was evicted. The team minibus that picked us up in England at the coach station from the boat, I flew home. You know, I come home straight away. I didn't know what was going on. I knew there was something wrong. And I come home to Dublin, you know, after being in Denmark for the North East Division's team. And, Brian, I'm getting emotional now. It's
all right.
Anyway, I got picked up at Dublin Airport and I got dropped at the bottom of my road and had my sports bag and my suitcase. And I ran my road. Funny enough, the TD at the time, TDs are members of parliament in the Irish government. It's the same as an MP here. Sean Moore, he fought for my family. And they named the road Sean Moore Road. They named it after him. And I ran that road with my suitcase and my sports bag. And there was a big wall blocking the view. When I turned the corner, my dad was sitting outside the house, sitting on a rocking chair, all my belongings, my family belongings on the street. And people asked me about my boxing trophies. The bailiffs went in and they smashed all my boxing trophies. They couldn't smash my medals. But they smashed all my boxing trophies. They smashed up family belongings and all sorts. It was a bad time, you know, but we had a lot of support from the local community, and my mum, thank God, got better. But people say about hardship, Brian. I've had a lot of hardship in my life. You know, I've had a lot of battles in my life. I've been shot a couple of times. I've been stabbed many times. I've had a lot of battles in my life, Brian. I've been battling probably from the day I left the womb. I battled to get out, and I've been battling ever since. The boxing ring, Brian, was probably the safest place for me because there was only one man beating me. Even if it was Mike Tyson or Lennox Lewis, you know, you had the best medical care at ringside, you had a referee, you know, you had a break in between rounds. When I was getting battered by the bullies, there was no break. There was no medical care. If you're lucky enough to get to a hospital, if you're able to get to a hospital after the beating, you know, if an ambulance will come and get you, you know. But in the boxing, it was the safest place for me. And I've had a lot of hardship, but I think you have to experience hardship. You have to experience hard times, Brian, to appreciate good times. And my life, I've got a good life now. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't take drugs, I don't gamble. You know, I work hard. I still do my security work, Brian. I work for Ambi Medical Group. I'm an ambassador for Ambi Medical Group. I'm an ambassador for Rail Construction Utilities, and I'm an ambassador for Lowe's Bullion and Britannia Jewellery. So 3 companies that look after me, and very proud to say that I represent them well. And I've got a good life now, Brian. It's been hard, and there's a lot of wonderful things happening now.
What it is, Joe, when you've had a hard upbringing and you've struggled for food and things like that, we used to steal tatties out of the field. We used to go on the beach to get coal. And we'd bring the sea coal off the beach and things like that. But you appreciate life a lot more now because you've gone through the hard times. These are easy times. The kids don't know the bond these days.
No, Yeah, we had nothing when we were kids. Like I said, I experienced a lot of bullying, Brian. You know, I experienced a lot of bullying, but not just for me, but for 4 younger sisters and 2 younger brothers. So I experienced, you know, a lot of bullying for them, trying to protect them. But it was physical bullying, Brian. You know, you got battered, you got beaten up, bruised, cut. You know, but you had a time period that you would heal. You know, you get cut, you get bruised. The doctor can say to you, yeah, that's 3 weeks, 6 weeks, you'll be healed. That was physical bullying. If you were able to get home and close your front door, you could get away from the bullies. But see, today, Brian, there's no safe haven for bullies because the bullies are bullying men, women, children, kids, boys, girls on the internet.
Yes.
Social bullying on the YouTubers or whatever I don't do but the mobile phones. They're bullying them on mobile phones.
You don't get what it is. You don't get peace and quiet because, like you said, once you get home, shut your door. You're with your family.
You are safe from the physical bullies. But see the mental torture now, Brian.
Mental torture worse. Did you know more kids kill themselves through mental torture than they do actually physical torture?
Brian, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. You know, I hate bullying. I don't condone any type of bullying. It's horrible. You know, but the mental bullying. There's no time to heal. They can't give you a time limit to heal. You get battered. You get your teeth knocked out. I had my teeth knocked out. I've been stabbed. I've been shot. They can tell you, the doctor can tell you nearly to the hour how long it will take for you to heal. Right? But see, when you're getting mentally bullied, right? Tortured over the phones, tortured over the computer, and you're being a victim of these keyboard warriors, right? You're a victim of them. They can't give you a time that you're going to heal in because there is no, some people never heal, Brian, from the mental torture. And it's heartbreaking.
Horrible to see and all of these fake accounts they've got and they go and the police do nothing whatsoever about it. But this young girl there, 6 of them, bullied her online. They told her to go home, take a load of tablets. She took them online, took the tablets and died. That's disgusting. 16-year-old kid dying, being bullied.
God rest her, Brian. God rest her, Brian.
We're trying to change the way Facebook is used. We're trying to where you can.
I know you and Emma. I praise you for that. We're
trying to get it so it can be police better, where you can contact someone and say, "Look, this is happening, that's happening," so they can do something about it. There's so many people getting bullied on these computers. Even if I can get bullied, anyone can get bullied. It's just been terrible. But we're getting to the end of it now, so it's good. But how are you doing anyway, Joe, to day now?
Brian, I'm in a great place. I'm involved with mental health charities. On Mass Mental Health, my friend Dave Mariner, he asked me to get involved, and very, very proud to say through Dave Mariner now they're opening up the Big Joe Boxing Academies. They've opened the first one in Leeds, and they're going to roll them out around the country. You know, I'm so proud, you know, for this to be happening, but my name to be associated with the boxing clubs. And the thing is, it's not just for kids to come in and adults to come in to learn to box. If they don't want to box, it's a safe haven. You know, if some of these kids are getting chased for their mobile phones, or getting chased for their sneakers, or getting chased for their jackets by the bullies, they might not have the stamina, they might not have the speed to make it home. But if they can make it to the local boxing gym and get in there, that is a safe haven for them. It's like a youth club. It's going to be a community centre. The boxing part of it is only going to be one part of it. The Big Joe Boxing Academies, they're going to be, for me, I believe, a great safe haven for children, because they're closing down police stations, Brian, all over the UK.
Yeah, they are.
And the way society is at the moment, you think they should be opening police stations. Instead, they're closing them down. And young children don't have a lot of safe havens other than their own home. And if they're a distance away from their own home and they're being chased by a gang of bullies, they've got to have somewhere that they can run to. And these boxing gyms will be a place for them to run to, you know. And any boxing gym in the UK is a place for them to get to. Not just the Big Joe Boxing Academies, any boxing gym.
At the North East anti-knife campaign with Ben Spann, we've tried to stop that. a knife, saying to kids that carrying a knife, you're carrying a knife, you're only carrying it for one reason, to stab someone. You're going to kill someone. You're going to take their life. You're going to take your own life and everyone around you. So you've got to remember, if you're carrying a knife, what you carrying, you know.
My friend Simon Jones was stabbed to death just over 2 years ago. 57-year-old granddad, and ex-Falklands veteran, RAF regiment, 14 years in the RAF regiment, and he was stabbed to death on a car park in Derby by a gang of, for want of another word, scum, trying to rob his van, and they stabbed him to death and left him to bleed to death on a car park, you know. And I've done a lot of anti-knife campaigns. You know, I think it's a cowardly thing to carry a knife. It's even worse to use it. You know, we grew up in an era, Brian, where you had a punch up, and I had many punch ups. You know, win, lose or draw. I gave it the best account that I possibly could, like I said. But in later life, I got stabbed a couple of times. I got shot a couple of times. But that's the world we're living in today, and it seems to be getting worse, Brian. It seems to be getting worse. You get a box of apples, right, and you leave one rotten apple in that box. It's going to rot the rest of the box of apples. And that's the way society is. There's a lot of rot in society, you know, and it's got to be stopped to give the future, and children are our future, you know, to give the future of the world a chance. They're taking young lives, you know, every day, Brian. You hear about stabbings and deaths and shootings. Society's gone so bad. Animals wouldn't do to each other what people do to each other.
Yes.
You know, animals kill to eat, kill to survive. People seem to just kill for the sake of killing.
Species that kill for sport.
It's not nice. No. It's not nice, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse. You know, that everywhere now, every small community, major cities, villages, there doesn't seem to be any safe haven from thuggery.
Yeah, and I think it's getting, like you say, it's getting worse and worse. And when's it going to end? It's just never ending.
Well, they've got to increase the numbers of the police forces. They've got to increase the sentences of the jail sentences. And I'm a man that has been to prison, you know, but they're not getting punished hard enough. Some of these thugs, they're not getting punished severely enough. You know, they've got to do something, and they've got to do something fairly quick before it gets out of hand altogether. It's bad. It's bad. Yes, but it will get worse if they don't do something, Brian.
We're in the schools talking to kids. Obviously, I've been to jail before. I've been in loads of fights like yourself, Joe, and stabbed, shot, hit with bars and everything. It's not clever, it's not good, not glorified it, but that's what happens when you're in that world. But what I'm saying is, if I didn't have what I'd gone through, I wouldn't have the experience to speak to these kids in the schools to tell them, don't do it. I've been there. Most of my friends have been shot to death, stabbed to death. They're not here no more. Selling drugs, taking drugs, just the end product is jail or being a drug addict the rest of your life. Just don't do it.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I do a lot of anti-bullying campaigns. I do a lot of anti-knife campaigns. I do a lot of mental health, you know, campaigns. I try and help anybody I possibly can. And if everybody was to, a lot of people turn a blind eye, Brian, because it doesn't directly affect them, and they think, oh, it doesn't affect me, so I'll leave it be.
Yeah.
But the longer you leave it be, the worse it's getting. If everybody was to unite against the knife crime, against the gun crime, and we all make a stance, we've got a chance. United we stand, divided we fall.
It's only the community that can do it. It's only the community can do it.
You have to stand strong. You know, there's different parts of the UK, but they've got a strong community spirit, and they're starting to beat the thugs. Now, if they can roll that out around the rest of the UK, we've got a chance.
Yeah.
You know, but they have to do something. They've got to increase the numbers of the police as well. You know, you don't see many policemen patrolling on the streets anymore. You know, the foot patrols. You've got the response units, but the response units, Brian, are great.
When we were kids, as you know, There's the police. Run. You'd run when you seen a policeman. You'd be scared.
Oh yeah.
You're not scared now. There's one the other day on his own, young 23-year-old. 3 lads grabbed him, tried to cut his throat and beat him up. 23-year-old.
Policeman.
Just in Middlesbrough. Terrible. So they're going to do that to a policeman. What they're going to do to it?
They've got to increase the numbers of the police, and like I said, they've got to have them in force. You know, because that's what they are. They're a police force. They've got to be a force. You know, and the response teams, the response says it itself. A response is when something happens, they respond to what's happening.
Right.
You know, by the time they respond, the thugs are gone. You know, if the police were there patrolling, some of these things that happen might not happen. Some of the murders might not happen. I'm not saying that they're going to stop it overnight, Brian. You know, but they've got to increase the numbers.
Yeah.
They've got to increase the numbers. They've got to make their presence, the police force, felt. You know, and they've got to be more proactive than reactive. You know, and that's what I believe. You know, at the same time, Brian, I don't like seeing them in my rearview mirror when I'm driving. You know, I know they've got to be. I know they've got to be there. You know, and I know they have to be there. You know, and I sing their praises. But even today, when I was driving earlier on today, I'm looking in my mirror and I thought, oh God, am I going to get a pull? Even though I'm insured and everything else, you still have that jittery in your stomach because he was following me.
The light goes on.
He was going in the same direction as me for a couple of miles, and I thought, oh bloody hell! But he went off in a different mood after that. But you don't like seeing him in the rear view mirror, but they've got to be there, and I'd like to see an increased number of them, you know, and I'd like to see them more, like I said, proactive than reactive, and they could listen. They could save more lives. But if they save one life, it's a success, Brian. You know, every life saved is a success because no one has the right to take somebody's life with a knife or a gun.
I think you can do. The most valuable thing in the world is life.
Well, every day, Brian, is a gift from God. That's why it's called the present. It's a gift from God. You know, tomorrow's not promised to anybody. You know, we've saw a lot of death with this COVID. You know, and that's. I'm not even saying it's a natural death. It's not a natural death as such. But getting stabbed or shot definitely isn't a natural death. You know, and to end somebody's life violently like that with a knife or a gun is horrible because mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, cousins, nephews, nieces, the suffering. You know, I cried when my friend Simon Jones was stabbed. I cried like I cried so much. But I lost a friend. His mother and father lost a son. His mother and father lost a son. You know, so I can't imagine the pain they went through.
Yeah, just got off a bit. Yeah,
2 minutes.
I can't do it, me. I'm useless.
2 seconds.
No, you're still there. I can still see you.
Yeah. We just went off. We're
still recording. Yeah.
Are you still on?
Yeah.
So about 10 minutes left, Joe. What do you want to say just before we go, mate?
No, just thank you for everybody that's helped me in my life. You know, too many names to mention. You know, but anybody that is watching this or anybody that knows anybody that has helped me in my life, thank you. You know, because I've had a lot of help in my life. You know, when I was boxing, I had a lot of help from different trainers, different fighters, and
but you still have to go and do it yourself. You still have to get up out of bed and go and do these things.
Yeah, but the thing is that we become the man I am today, Brian. You know, and I like to think that I'm a good ambassador for Ireland. I'm a good ambassador for my family. I'm a good ambassador for boxing. I try to be the best that I can, you know, and I pride myself on my manners. I carry myself as best I can. I help anybody I can. And
don't know anyone who's got a bad word for you, mate. Not one person.
I don't do anybody any wrong intentionally. If I make a mistake, we're only human. I say I'm sorry. Yes. And let's try and put it right. We're not conditioned to not make a mistake, you know. And like it says in the Bible, Eddie has done no evil, cast the first stone. You know, I've made mistakes. I've done wrong. I've been punished. Like I said, I went to prison for the wrong I've done, and I've come out and I've tried to be the best I can possibly be, and I'm happy with my life, Brian. You know, I'm happy. I've I've got a lot of
wonderful tonight and all the fans anyway.
Oh, listen, for everybody watching, thank you for taking an interest.
Thank you, Joe.
I've had a roller coaster of a life, you know, and I'm still here. And
for a long time.
Yeah, well, please God, Brian. You know, people say to me about music. I love music. I listen to opera music, but I love Elton John. I've seen him in concert twice, and I love that song. I'm still standing. You know, I'm still standing. Yeah, I've been knocked down, and I've got up and dusted myself down and soldiered on. People say about my dad used to call me for my runs, Brian, and he used to say, drag yourself out of bed. It's like dragging yourself off the deck when you get decked. Yeah. I used to say, Dad, no one's going to put me down. No one's going to put me down. Yeah. I remember the first time I got decked, Brian. I was boxing in the Acropolis Games. I boxed an Italian. I boxed a Canadian. And now I'm in the semi-finals and I'm boxing the Greek. And my left eye was damaged. And I fought. First round, done the best I could. Second round, I turned blindside on. My eye was completely closed. I didn't see the punch coming. It was a powerful punch, and I'm on the deck. Now, I didn't even know I'd been decked, Brian. I was lying on the deck, and I really thought I was in bed, and I was going like this. I was pulling the bed sheets over me. I was asleep. Brian, I was asleep, right? Next of all, I rolled onto my side. This is true as God. I rolled onto my side. My left eye was closed. I'm still pulling the bed sheets over me. My two cornermen, Mickey Hawkins and Jerry Hanna, they thought I was calling them into the ring, but I wasn't. I was pulling the bed sheets over me. So when I rolled onto my side, my left eye was closed. This eye was open. I saw the referee go 5. So for at least 15 seconds, I was asleep. From the time he hit me on the chin, to the time I fell down, to the time I lay on my back trying to pull the bed sheets over, to the time I rolled over onto my side, I was asleep. Yeah. Right? Instinctively pulling the bed sheets over me. Anyway, I went, shit, I'm on the deck here. And I dragged myself onto my feet. My two cornermen were in the ring at that stage. And I sort of staggered into their arms. I got beat on my feet. But I remember phoning my dad. I won the bronze medal. He went on to win the gold, the man that beat me. He beat the Dutchman in the final. He beat Arno van der Leiden, the Olympic bronze medalist, twice. He beat him in the final. So I lost to the gold medalist. And I remember phoning my dad. I said, Dad, I won a bronze medal. He said, well done, son. I said, Dad, remember you said about getting decked? It's like dragging yourself out of bed. He said, you got decked. I said, I got decked, Dad. But I said, I'm okay. I climbed to my feet. I got beat on my feet. But I said, it was exactly like you said. It was like being asleep, you know, and it was. But the punch didn't hurt me, Brian. The punch that knocked me down and knocked me out didn't hurt me. But I'll tell you a funny story. Have we got time for a funny story?
Yeah, of course we have, yeah.
Right, listen to this. I got to do Celebrity Eggheads, right? I got to do Celebrity Eggheads. And, Brian, listen to this, right? I left school when I was 14. I'm not academic, right? And I've done security all my life. I'm big and I've got a good presence. And I got to do security. I've done static guard, store detective, air marshal with Delta Airlines. I was in the part-time army, the Irish Army Military Police. I was in a bodyguard. I've done all types of security, Brian, right? So I'm not, like I said, I'm not intelligent in academic books and that. So I got invited to do Celebrity Eggheads. Me, Willie Thorne, the snooker player, who's dead now, God rest him.
Remember him?
Paul Dixon, he was a lovely man. Paul Dixon, the cricket player. Jeff Capes, the strong man. And the English goalkeeper. Lovely man. One of the great, Peter Shilton, right? So the five of us, the 5 of us are the celebrity team. So I wanted to do TV and film or sports. So I got food and drink. Now, you know, by looking at the size of me, I like my food, but I don't drink alcohol, right? But I thought, oh my God, I don't have a chance. So I've gone in, they asked me the first question. I got it right, Brian. I couldn't believe it. I went the middle. Got it right. The egghead, mastermind, Brain of Britain champion, got his question right. Then they asked me the second question. I went the middle again. And I got it right again. I couldn't believe it. two, Brian, 2 questions right. Next one, the egghead got his. So they asked me the third question. They said, where is the avocado from? I went, the avocado's a pear. I said, I know that because my dad used to give them to me when I was boxing. They're full of energy, glucose. But I said, I don't know where they're from. Give me the clues. So they said, Australasia, the Americas, or Europe. So I thought, it can't be the middle again. So I've gone Australasia, the biggest landmass. They went, no, it was the Americas, the middle. The mastermind champion, Brain of Britain, got his question right. But they said, Joe, you pushed him to the wire. You got beaten 3-2. What a fantastic achievement. So I was over the moon, Brian.
Yeah.
So I've gone to the green room. I phoned my dad. I said, Dad, I got 2 questions right out of 3. He goes, well done, son. I said, Dad, they said I pushed the mastermind champion, the Brain of Britain, to the wire. He said, son, it doesn't say much for the Brain of Britain now if you pushed them to the wire. And the celebrities in the room, finished up the Paul Dixon, Jeff Capes and Willie Thorne, they're all breaking the hat laughing. I went, thanks, Dad. Yeah. But it's just a funny story. But life is very, very good, Brian, I'm glad to say. I wish everybody watching this, listening to this, the same. I wish us all the happiness in the world. People ask me for my autograph, and I'm humbled, Brian, when people ask, but I always find happiness. Because you can have all the respect and all the money in the world, but if you're not happy, what good is it, you know?
Isn't.
I'm happy with my lot, you know. It's maybe not as much as the next man, but it's more than others, you know. There's a lot.
I think content is one of the most important things in life.
There's a lot less off than me, you know, and
of course.
I feel sorry for people, and I'm just grateful for what I have, and I feel sorry for people that have less. I wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much. It's been an honour having you
on. Brian, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. Emma, you have to turn this off with me. You haven't got a clue.
No, we'll keep talking.
God bless you.
I could talk to you all night.
Okay.
And I hope,
thank you.
I wish you all the very best. Emma, thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you both.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Love you a bit. Ciao, pal.
Same as Brian. Thank you. Same as Emma. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. And